Hello everyone, welcome back to our Node.js tutorial series. In our last video we talked about Node.js module and we saw how to write our own custom module by creating our maths module where we did our addition and subtraction operation. In this video we're going to learn about one of the most important modules in Node.js, which is the file system modules. If you're working with files, whether it is reading files, writing files, or manipulating them, this is the module you will be using. So now let's go ahead to find out what is the FS module. When I say FS, I mean file system. The FS module provides an API for interacting with the file system. This allows you to read files, just like I said, write files, delete files, and even update files. You can even perform other file-related operations. It is the call modules in Node.js, which means it comes built in with Node.js. So you don't need to install anything extra to use it. You don't need to do npm install. Once you install your Node.js, it comes directly with it. So let's move ahead to see how to import this file system module to our application. To do this, we need to import the FS module first, just like this. So we'll head over to our app.js, and in our app.js, we're going to say import FS. This is supposed to be FS from FS. So this is how to import our file system to our application. Now we have access to all the functions provided by this file system module. We're going to look at all the APIs, which means all the functions available. We're going to look at them one after the other. One of the APIs the file system made available to us is the reading file API. We're going to see how to read files using the FS system, the FS module rather. There are two ways you can read file using the FS module. You can read file synchronously, you can read file asynchronously. To read file synchronously, it means you're pausing every other function from running until your file finishes loading. So let us see how to do that using the FS modules. So here we're going to say const data equal to fs.read file sync. So read file sync is an API that allows us to read files synchronously, which means every other program will stop running until this is done. And it takes two parameters. The first parameter is the name of the file you're reading, or the directory to the file you're reading. So we're just going to create a file here. I'm going to create a test file. I'm going to call it fs.txt. So that is going to be the name of the file I'm reading, fs.txt. And the second parameter is the encoding. So I'm going to use the UTF-8 encoding. After this, I'm going to log out the data. I'm going to do console.log data. And if I save this, let's go back to our fs.txt. Let's add something. Say this is an FS module. So if I save this and I go back to run my application in my terminal, I'm saying node app.js. If I hit enter, we're going to see the content of the file. This is an FS module. So another method to read a file using the FS module is to read asynchronously, which means we are not blocking any other code. we are reading in background, and we are returning success or error. How do we do that? We say fs.read file. This takes 3 parameters. The first parameter is the file you are reading, which is the fs.txt. The second parameter is the encoding method, which we are using the UTF-8. And the third parameter is a callback function that returns error or data. So here we're going to say if error, we're going to say console.log an error occurred, and we're going to pass in the error. Else, if there is no error, we're going to log out the data. So let's see how this comes out in our terminal. Let's clean and run our application. We have, this is an FS module. This is how to read your file asynchronously to avoid blocking of code. Remember, we said the read file sync is a blocking operation, which means it will read the file and stop every other program from running until it reads completely. And I said the UTF-8 is the encoding format. If you don't specify this encoding format, the default will be a buffer object. So we'll move over to the next API made available by the file system module, which is the writing file in Node.js. Let's see how to write a file, how to write to a file in Node.js using the file system module. This also has 2 methods of doing it. We have the synchronous method and the asynchronous method. Let us see how to write file synchronously. We use the API called the fs.write_sync. This takes 2 parameters. The first parameter is the file you want to write to, which is the fs.txt, and the second parameter is the content you want to write to the file. Here we're saying, here we are writing sync file. So if I save this, I'm just going to log out console.log done writing. So if I save this and I go back to my terminal to rerun my application, I have done writing. And if I go back to my fx.txt, we are going to see here we are writing sync file. What we basically did was to create a new file. What we basically did was to create a new content file, which What we basically did was to create a new file, which is the fs.txt, and we wrote to it. But because the file already exists, that is why we're overriding the file and we're just writing to it. Now let's see how to do the same thing asynchronously, which means we're not going to block any code from running. This is going to run in background while we wait for response. So to do this, we're going to say fs.write_file. And this is going to take 3 parameters. The first parameter, we're going to have the fs.txt, which is the file we're writing to. The second parameter is going to be the content. Say this is an async file writing. And the third parameter is going to be the callback function, which is the error and the data. But because we're not expecting any data, we're just going to monitor if there's any error. So I'm just saying if error, log out console.log an error occurred, and we're going to pass in the error that occurred. Else, we're going to say console.log done writing async. If I save this and I try to rerun my application, we're going to see done writing async. And if you go back to the file, we're going to see this is an async file writing. So take note of this. Just like the reading, well, the writing of file comes in synchronous way and asynchronous way. One will block your application from running, while the other will not block any program from running. So the next API made available to us is the API to help us append text. If you look at this, what we are doing is to writing and writing. When we're writing, we overwrite what we already have. So let's see how to add new text to the file we are creating. So we use the appending API to do this. So how do we do that? It has two ways of doing it. It has the asynchronous way, and it also has the asynchronous way. We're going to look at the two methods of doing that. First, we're going to see the synchronous method by saying fs.append file sync. The append file sync takes two parameters. The first parameter is the file we are appending to. Here we have the fx.txt, and the second parameter is the file we want to append to the file. So I'm just going to go to the new line, and I'm going to say appending a new content, and I'm going to save. So after doing this, I'm just going to log out, console.log, done appending, and I'm going to save. If I save this and I go back to my terminal to restart my application, I'm going to have done appending. And if I go back to the fx.txt file, we're going to see a new file. So it did not override this. It just created a new file saying appending a new file. So let us see how we can do this asynchronously as well without blocking other programs from running. So we can say fs.append file. The fs.append file takes three parameters. The first parameter is the text or the file we are writing to, which in our case is the fx.txt. The second parameter is the file we want to append. Here I'm going to go to the next line. I'm saying appending new text, new content using async method. And the third parameter is going to be our callback function, which is going to check if there is an error. So I'm saying if error, just do something, console.log an error occurred, and we're going to specify the error. But if there is no error, we have the else block. Else, all you need to do is, this is right? All you need to do is say console.log done appending. So if I save this and try to rerun my application, I'm going to clear this and try to rerun my application. I have done appending, and if you check our file, we have a new content, say appending new content using async method. So this is how to append file to an already existing file using the synchronous method, which blocks other programs from running, and the asynchronous method, which does not block other file from running. So next we're going to look at deleting file from our Node application. So there is an endpoint, so there is an API that allows us to delete file, which is called the onLink method. So how do we do that? We also have two methods. We have the onLink synchronous and the onLink asynchronous. So let's see how we can delete file synchronously in our Node application. We'll do that by saying fs.onLink sync. The onLink sync takes one parameter, which is the file we want to unlink. fs.txt is the file we want to unlink. And after that, I'm just going to say console.log deleted. And if I save this and I run my application, you're going to have deleted, and we have the file deleted. This is how to run it synchronously rather. So let's see how to do this asynchronously. I'm going to say fs.onLink, and I'm going to pass in just two parameters. The first parameter is the file we want to unlink, and the second parameter is the callback function, which is the error, checking for the error. And we're saying if error, we're just going to console.log an error occurred, and we're going to pass in the error. But if there is no error, we're just going to say console.log done deleting. This is going to be a string done deleting. But now let's go back to create this file we deleted earlier. Now we have this file. So if I go back to run my application, I hit, you see done deleting, and the file deleted successfully. So this is how to delete file synchronously and asynchronously in our Node application. And finally, we're going to look at one more important API provided by the FS module, which is to create a directory in our Node application. To create directory, we use the API called the mkdir method, which is the make directory. Let's see how that works. We're going to see how that works. First, we're going to see how to create directory using the asynchronous method. How do we do that? Using the synchronous method rather, we say fs.mkdir sync. This takes just one parameter. The parameter is the name of the directory we want to create. So I'm going to say modules. I'm going to create modules directory. And after that, I'm just going to console.log created. And if I save this and I run this application, I'm just doing node app.js, we see we have created and we have a directory created for us. This is how to create using synchronous method. And how do we do this using a synchronous method? We do this by saying fs.mkdir. This takes two parameters. The first parameter is the name of the directory, so I'm going to call this new module, and the second parameter is the callback function. Sorry about that. The second parameter is the callback function, which is going to check if there is an error. So I'm saying if error console.log an error occurred, then pass in the error. But if there is no error, else just console.log done console.log done creating. So if we save this and we run our application again, we have new directory. So this is how to create directories synchronously and asynchronously in our Node application. So to summarize all we've discussed in this video, we said the FS module allows us to work with the file system. We can read files, we can write to files, we can append files, and even delete files using both synchronous and asynchronous method. We can also create directory, which we just demonstrated, using synchronous and asynchronous method. These are just the basic file operations you will use when building an application that interacts with your file system. That is it, guys, for this video. If you watched this video to this point and you've not subscribed, please do subscribe, like this video, share, and if you have any question or you want to make any recommendation to us, please drop it in the comment section and we'll be glad to respond to you. See you guys in the next video. Bye for now.